The book was so much better than the movie. We've all heard it. Most of us have probably even said it. But is it really always justified to say that the book was better? I mean, if you think about it, they are two different mediums. People are always complaining. They left out this. They added that. They changed this. It wasn't how I imagined it. But say if you were to take a gymnastics routine and compare it to a figure skating program, are you going to judge each of those by the same standards? No, of course not. Sure, they're both sports, just like books and movies are both ways of telling stories, but they have totally different elements. You're not going to be looking for a triple sow cow in a gymnastics routine. To quote Tanya Strauss, however, after spending a few years working in the film industry, doing professional script coverage and reading books for film adaptation, I've learned that different isn't necessarily bad. In fact, sometimes the only way to make a film that works, or won't totally flop, is to make some changes. So my point is this: books and movies are different mediums, and shouldn't be critiqued with all the same standards. Movies have time constraints, they work with visual appeals as opposed to descriptive language, and they have different elements such as music and sound, which books just don't have. For time constraints, to paraphrase a Blimey Cow video, if they were to leave everything that was in the book in the movie, it would be like a 6-hour movie. Think about it. Nobody wants to see a 6-hour movie. Stories are best told when they are adapted to the medium in which they're being told. Movies are meant to be watched in one sitting, whereas books, not so much. So, they make changes. There are also elements in books that don't play out well in movies, so there's always has to be adaptations to tell the story best in the medium that it's being told. They're not necessarily bad changes. For visual appeals, a picture's worth 1,000 words. We've all heard that one. But just like language has literary tools that it uses, film has other tools it uses, such as camera angles and framing, lighting, coloring, and even visual effects. And they use all these tools to convey the same message that is conveyed in writing. They're just different ways of doing it. A lot of people also complain about the movie being different than how they imagined it, and that's why they prefer books, which is fine. If you prefer books, fine. But if you're disappointed that the movie was different, it's not really justified. A good example of this is Rue from The Hunger Games. In the movie, she was casted as an African American girl, and some people really had complaints about this because they didn't imagine her that way, even though she was described as having dark brown skin in the book. However, when you go and you watch a movie, you have to keep in mind it's like reading a poem. Every person who reads a poem is going to come away with a different interpretation of it. So, a movie is someone else's interpretation of the book. So, this is a quote from an article called "What is the Difference Between Books and Films?" It says, "Whatever else it may be, an adaptation is always an interpretation involving somebody's personal views of the book and choices of elements to retain, reproduce, change, or leave out." So keep that in mind next time you watch a movie. Books and movies also have different elements, specifically sound and music. Books have to create all their moods through words, whereas movies don't really have the liberty to use words very much, but they do have the liberty to use sound, which is something that books can't really do. Books, you can describe a sound in a book, but there's nothing like experiencing the sound and maybe even being startled by a loud thud. You can't portray that feeling necessarily in a book. And also music is a unique way to create a mood, just like language is used in books. They're just different. So when you go and you watch a movie, go into it with realistic expectations. appreciate them for the art that they are. Don't be disappointed when something's different than the book, because really, changes are appropriate to create a successful movie. Quote from Sarah Davis, who wrote an article. She says, "Now this may be a bit controversial, but I think it's time we begin to realize that books and movies are telling a story in different ways and should be treated as such." So next time you go and you see a movie adaptation of your favorite book, I really encourage you to really think before you say that the book was better. Was the book really better, or was it just different? So when you watch the movie, I encourage you to really watch it as its entirety. Think of it as a story being told in and of itself before you go and compare it to the book. Alright, thank you. That's my 2 cents.